So let's talk a little bit about the aftermath of a government breach, or maybe any breach that even in the private sector that would be kind of relevant for government intervention, or for your organization's work. Maybe you can give us just a couple of examples of breaches that, recent breaches. I mean, we all hear about them all the time, but maybe those in which, US-CERT had to deal with in particular and kind of sucked your resources.
So we don't name and shame breaches to entities, but one that I know has gotten a lot of attention, and I was even part of congressional hearings about, is opium. And so that one is one that we were involved in and worked on. I think what we try to do around these breaches is take the lessons learned. So what can we learn from this? How did this happen? What was the mechanism from which they were able to be successful in these breaches? And then take that information and try to share it most broadly, and ensure that, the mitigation plans that we put together with the victims, with our interagency partners around these kinds of breaches, are shared broadly. What kinds of things do we continue to see trend across the incidents we respond to? What are the controls that are missing time and time again? And it gets back to something that we've been preaching, and our international community's been preaching for years, are some simple controls that, if they were implemented, and not specific to any one event, but they seem to be a trend, are things like reducing administrative privileges of users on their local machines, ensuring that operating systems and applications are both patched and maintained on a regular schedule, and then implementing things like whitelisting tools that would really help alleviate executables from running if they're not part of a known good list. These are all simple controls that can be not just implemented and then walk away, but implemented and then monitored. They have to be monitored on a regular basis. But these would reduce about 80 to 85% of the incidences that we respond to if they were implemented and monitored. So these are some things that are coming out of the events that we deal with, that we're continuing to try to evangelize the communities that we talk to, be it the Hill, be it departments and agencies, be it state and local, critical infrastructure, and also our international community. We hear the same thing back from them when we meet with our international counterparts, that they're dealing with the same kinds of incidences that happen because these just typical common controls aren't implemented and then monitored. So really trying to be an evangelist for reducing these kinds of vulnerabilities, reducing the white noise, so that we can use these very specific skilled cyber experts and limited resources that we have in cyber for the more difficult, more advanced persistent threat type activities, that we're not wasting their time on an exploit or an incident that was exploited because of a CVE that was available in 2009.
Yes.
Ensuring that these critical vulnerabilities are patched, and ensuring that a lot of the efforts that we've done across the department have been to ensure that there's attention on those, and working with departments and agencies to make sure that those critical vulnerabilities are patched, because we see them being exploited, and we want to make sure that they're not victim to that same exploit.
So you're actually answering a couple of my next questions, and I can totally see thank you. I can totally see the agenda of really putting in place all these basic controls. And we actually had a really great blog about this on Peerlyst. Everybody's talking about the innovation, but so many companies are not really implementing the very basic controls that would actually prevent the majority of these major breaches. But is there any particular aspect that's different when your team has to deal with the post-breach conclusion making or actions when it's a government agency breach versus maybe a private company like Aetna, or something more political like Sony, where the government still chooses to take some role in the forensics?
Well, we're not the Geek Squad. We're not trying to compete with our counterparts in private industry. So we definitely can't respond to every single event that happens across our constituency. And so the events that we typically get engaged in are specific to our .gov constituency. as well as some critical infrastructure will get engaged there as well. So we do have some criteria of when we will send an incident response team on site, or even when we'll provide additional assistance of a hybrid kind of approach. Sending us malware samples, we're going to look at those and we're going to give them a report associated with that, but that's very different than sending a team on site, a flyaway team. So
Yeah.
is certain criteria when we get engaged, and it is associated with those entities. And typically it's going to be what we would consider to be more of an advanced threat. We're not going to get engaged when it's something associated with a cyber criminal type activity. The ones that where we feel our team is most valuable to a victim is when it's an advanced threat, meaning that they're well focused or they're well funded, with well funded, long time horizons. That those are going to be difficult for a typical government agency or even critical infrastructure partner to be able to get that entity out of their network. Usually when they find that kind of activity within their network, sometimes they don't even realize it, but there's more than one actor that will be in their network. And so that's when we're going to get engaged and deploy our resources to help them with that, because it's going to take a period of time for them to do an assessment of that environment to even know how embedded and how deep that actor has gone. That's not something where you can just reimage a box and expect it to go away. And so those are the kinds of engagements that we have across our community when it becomes incident response engagements. It's not all the time, like I said, and we're certainly not here to compete with private industry that also does this work. A lot of times we'll be partnering with private industry on this, because they're working with them. And so, and we're learning from them and they're learning from us. And that's a huge benefit to both sides and also to the victim. The biggest thing is taking that information back and sharing those indicators of compromise that we uncover when we're there on site, and then putting those out into our products and sharing them really broadly. We really want to ensure that anything that we learn from that victim is shared most broadly across the community to make sure that there's not another victim from that. And so the ability for us to do that and share that broadly is also hugely beneficial, specifically with the more advanced threats, because they're the most difficult to first of all catch and then to ferret out. And so having us engaged in those and then sharing that really broadly, kind of opening up the aperture across the communities that we our constituency is really beneficial to the cyber community, and something that we really try to focus on in the work that we do.
So a CISO in a large company, in a Fortune 500 company, would know how to reach you guys if they needed help.
I would hope so. We have so many different ways that we're trying to communicate with the industries through our information sharing analysis centers that are, and there's one for all 16 sectors. And that's one, avenue or channel for communication that we leverage highly, because again, it's sharing that information through those ISACs, and then they share it out through their thousands of members across their specific critical infrastructure sector or vertical. We also work with sector specific agencies to make sure that they also know of the services that we can provide their specific constituencies if and when they find themselves, being vulnerable to something. And we're also listed on a number of websites like the New York Times and others as a resource to come to when you need assistance. There's information available on our website as well. We have a lot of information on how to reach us, be it sharing a malware sample, be it a question, be it just trying to educate yourself as a home user. We have a whole section for that as well. So there's a number of ways to get in contact with us, but even this is another way for us to let the community, a different community, know about our capabilities and where we sit within the larger U.S. government and what our expertise is and when you would want to call us.
So my last question on this part is, do you think that the phasing out of Internet Explorer would actually impact the amount of work you guys have?
Question's funny. So I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think any one product's phasing out or even the introduction of another would change the scope of work that we do. We have, in cyber, there's no shortage of exploitable code out there, be it from proprietary vendors or be it from open source. It's all an opportunity for a hacker to find that one hole in. As a defender, I have to defend against a million things, and as a hacker, I only have to find one vulnerability. And so kind of a losing proposition for us. There's no one silver bullet to this, and it's a team sport, as I always say. We have to work across government, we work across industry, we work across the globe with our partners, unusual. Some of them are very unusual that we work with, and to try to tamper down the noise on the internet. You know, Safer, Stronger Internet is our motto for all Americans while protecting constitutional rights. And that's not something that we can do individually. It's not something, there's no silver bullet out there to help us accomplish that. And that's really something that we continually try to evangelize in all these opportunities that we have to talk to this kind of community.
Well, we feel like you. It sounds like a very noble cause. So I know we're out of time. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
And yes, and we would love to hear from you. If you have any message to our community or want to share any questions, please come back and write.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate it very much. And I look forward to hearing from the community about this conversation and any questions they have for me.
Thank you. Okay, have a good one.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.